and welcome to another episode. We have a very special guest who Mike actually went out of his way and got braces for.
Yeah.
So we want, during this, don't listen to us at all. Just keep looking at Mike's mouth the whole time, make him feel really self-conscious. You want to introduce our illustrious?
Yeah. ELLiOT is one of the first comic book creators I ever met. ELLiOT, do you recall coming to my place in Boston?
I do. You had a guy. You had a pair of pants under a bookshelf, and it was hanging out like there was a guy stuck under it.
There was a guy stuck under
it. Yeah, you were working for what was it?
Boston
Phoenix? Yeah. Cool.
Wow.
And just ELLiOT stopped by out of the blue and introduced himself, and I was thrilled because I had wanted to get into comics, and I'm not sure how we hooked up, but I've known ELLiOT for, it would be like 50 years now.
50 years, yeah.
Yeah.
Just about, yeah. Last time I lived in Boston was like mid-70s. Wow. Hello.
And then ELLiOT burst into the comic book scene by selling a script to, was it Julie Schwartz? Was he the guy that bought your script?
Yeah.
And Julie was a great editor because his career spanned from the science fiction pulse of the 30s all the way into the 80s, because I know he was my editor briefly while I was working for DC.
Yeah.
And he was a real sweet guy. Everybody loved Julie. And because of ELLiOT's work on Superman outside the DC, when he wrote about Superman, he was able to get a job with DC writing Superman, and he wrote some of the seminal Superman stories that set the tone for much that was to follow. ELLiOT, have those books been repackaged?
They have, over and over and over again. My first Superman story was Must There Be a Superman, and that I think that's been reprinted in various anthologies 3 or 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, I think I probably have it in one of those big books that I have.
Yeah.
Then you worked on Green Arrow,
Batman, Supergirl, Batgirl, Wonder Woman, all the girls they gave me for a while, and just about all the characters except Flash. I don't think I ever wrote a Flash. Carrie Bates was doing it at that time.
When you wrote a script, do you write full script?
Almost always, yeah.
Did you just kind of devise your own method and turn it in?
I did. Yeah, the first story I wrote, the one I sold to Julie, the Green Arrow story, was actually drew boxes on the page and filled them in with dialogue and caption buttons. I thought, how else are you going to do it?
That's how I wrote comics.
That's how Mike did for a while.
Really?
For 20 years, I would draw each page out by hand.
Really?
Including my crude stick figures. They're a little more than stick figures. I'm no great artist, but it was good enough that anybody could tell at a glance what I had in mind. Artists and editors loved it because one page of my writing looked like one page of comics. And they didn't have to leave. They didn't have to imagine what I wanted them to draw because I drew it out. But eventually my back caught up with me and I started to do full script. However, for those who are interested in creating comics, I recommend it, whether you can draw or not, because it teaches you so many important lessons. For example, the most important lesson is I start with a panel. And I draw the panel that would draw us into the story to introduce the protagonist. And then I was forced to think what happens next, which is the essential question in all fiction. And the reader has to care what happens next before he'll turn the page. And when you proceed like that, panel to panel, you're thinking ahead. What happens next?
Yeah. Well, the page becomes a coherent whole. I mean, that's what I always liked about Jack Kirby's work. Every page was like a painting, all the panels figured into each other.
How well did you know Kirby?
Not that well. We had lunch a few times, and he always picked up the check, which was nice. No, he was a good guy. He was a real good guy. He lived near me. And he was great.
Did he have a script in his head, or did he just start creating comics on a blank sheet?
Well, he never told me, but here's what I think. You know how Al Williamson used to be able to start in the corner of a figure
Yeah.
and draw like a horse without taking his pencil off the page?
Yeah.
Right.
He had stories like that in his head, Jack did. So when he used to work with Stan would like talk to him for 20 minutes on the phone, and he would show up with a finished story. And I don't know whether they had anything to do with what Stan had in mind or not, but oh yeah, real organic sense of storytelling. It just happened in his head, like Paul McCartney with songs. You know, they just live there.
I know some people can do it, some can't. Kirby obviously could. He had so many ideas stored in his head, and visually, he created the whole modern lexicon of comics.
Yeah, I mean, he was the reason most of the guys seem to like to draw to write scripts plot style, because he made it easier. A lot of artists make it harder. That's why I don't do it. A lot of artists.
You don't write plot style.
No.
Neither
When
do
I was editing, I did. You know, I encouraged writers to do it that way, just because it was easier for me. But I don't like doing it. I like writing my whole script and then turning my back and going away and working on the next project.
Well, I think it's important to include the dialogue so that the artist knows how the characters to act or behave.
Yeah. And very often Jack would write the dialogue when he just got a general script. He would write dialogue.
Yeah.
Because it made it easier for him.
Did you do any work for Marvel?
I did a Hulk, and I did a Spider-Man. I did an Iron Man story. I don't think ever got published. And I did a whole bunch of those Spidey super stories that came out with the Electric Company.
Oh, that's right.
You
Nice.
know? Yeah. You know, I would have this. I had this explosive relationship with Julie. So every few months we would get mad at each other, and I would stalk out in a huff. You know, a huff would come in the office on big balloon tires and take me away, and I would disappear for weeks at a time. And I would call up. I called up Stan one day when there was an extended period of my being persona non grata, and I said, I had a fight with my editor. Can I have like 4 books a month? And he said, you can have 1 book, and we'll see what happens. And he gave me a Spider-Man story, which was nice.
That's great.
And this happened like 4 or 5 times. I would write a story and pay my rent, and they wouldn't see me again at Marvel for months unless they ran into me at a party. But Stan was always he was always more generous than he needed to be.
I always thought so.
That matter. But
have you read any of the biographies
of Stan?
Yeah.
I haven't. No. I heard there's a new one out.
Yeah, it's a new one, and it takes a very dark view of him.
Really?
Yeah, let me look that up.
People are always talking dark about Stan just because everybody loves Jack so much.
I know.
Yeah.
I think it was a lot more.
It's not fair. It's not fair.
It was a lot more complicated than that.
Yeah.
Oh, and there are so many. I read Danny Fingeroth's biography, and I thought it was first rate.
Yeah.
But the one that everyone is talking about is True Believer, The Rise and Fall of Stan Lee by Abraham Reisman.
Reisman. Do we know him?
No,
Is he,
I do not know him.
is he an expert of something?
Well, it says the definitive revelatory biography of Marvel Comics icon Stan Lee, a writer and entrepreneur at steep personal cost. And Neil Gaiman says a biography that reads like a thriller or a whodunit. Scrupulously honest, deeply damning, and sometimes even heartbreaking. And I imagine that's true. I met Stan on a number of occasions. When I was living in Boston, I went down to New York and I interviewed him for Cream magazine. And he made quite an impression on me.
Were you at Cream when they published that story about the kid that held up a bank for like 6 or 8 hours? in the village?
I don't know. I was
They
writing
open?
for Cream from around 73 to 75 or 76. I'd have to go look. Of course, I wrote about pop culture. I didn't write about music,
Right.
although I've been writing about music all my life. In fact, I was writing about music today. I write for a friend's website because I still love music, and we go out and hear as much music as we can. ELLiOT, do you go out to hear live music?
I do. I do every chance I get. Not lately. I've been, stuck in my house.
Yeah.
But yeah.
You're in San Francisco, right?
No, I'm in LA.
Oh,
I go to the Hollywood Bowl here and there once in a while. I saw James Taylor at the Hollywood Bowl maybe just before the pandemic, and he was dancing around the stage like he's Dick Van Dyke or something. And it occurred to me he's older than me. I should,
Wow.
I
Yeah.
should lose some weight. Yeah, he was great.
what about do you visit smaller clubs in LA when you're able?
Not for a long time. I go to this place called the Sagebrush Cantina once in a while, especially when Katie Shorey's there. A girl named Katie Shorey. She does a Stevie Nicks tribute. She's really good. I had a mad crush on Stevie Nicks. Got a mild crush on Katie, I guess.
How did you come about writing your first novel?
Well, it was a tie-in. The idea was it was a tie-in with the first two Superman movies, Last Son of Krypton. And I wrote a memo to Carmine Infantino, who was a publisher at that time, when I was still in graduate school. And I said, something, I studied journalism and sociology, and I think the time is coming back for heroes. We're going to have heroes all through the culture again. And I wrote this memo, and he pats me on the head and says, good memo, good memo. I'm not sure he ever read it. But I ran home and wrote a treatment for a screenplay for a Superman movie. And I tried to get them to buy it, and he pat me on the head again. And next thing I know, Alfie Bester's in the office talking about writing the screenplay for Superman. So I hung out with him for a day and just hung out with him because he knew everything you need to know about that stuff. And for some reason that fell through. So I went upstairs to Warner Books, the book publisher, and I found an editor up there and convinced her to buy my screenplay treatment as a novel. Meanwhile, a few months later, Mario Puzo showed up at the office, sitting on the floor in the library with Nelson Bridwell, looking at old comic books. And I was kind of thrilled to meet him because he was Mario Puzo. I'd read a couple of his books by that time. And Carrie Bates and I ended up hanging out with him for 2 days, talking about Superman, smoking Cuban cigars. He had these great cigars, these enormous Churchills. I don't think they were Cohibas, but I think they were Romeo and Julietas. But we sat in the conference room, sneaking up the place for 2 days straight. And at some point, he looks up and he says, "Wait a minute." He didn't know anything about the character. He says, "I get it." He says, "This is a Greek tragedy." I said, "Yeah, that's what we've been trying to tell you for 2 days." So he got it. At least in terms of mythological norms, he understood it. So they were gonna do 2 movies, and the idea was that my book would come out between the 2 films to keep interest up. And Mario had the right to do a novelization of the screenplay, but he tripped over the Salkins, who were producing it. He got into a fight with them because they brought in other writers to do a rewrite, and he retained the right to do a novel, but didn't exercise it. just so nobody else could do it either. So they ended up bringing my book out with the first movie, and they asked me to do another one with the second movie. Completely unrelated story, unrelated to the movie in both cases. And the day the movie came out, I was living in New Hampshire. I got this phone call from Saul Harrison, who was publisher at that time. He said, Alexander Salkin wants to sue you. I said, why? He says, because he said there were too many incidents in the book that were the same as the movie. I said, well, then that means that obviously Mario or the Newmans were stealing incidents from my book. You can look in this drawer at this contract at that time and place, and you can see that I handed in the book about 9 months before Mario finished the first draft of the movie. He says, okay, and calls me back in New Hampshire the next day. He says, Salkin says, just kidding. So,
Oh.
Right. Was that your first novel?
yes, it was.
Oh, what made you think you could write a novel?
I always thought I could write a novel. I wrote a novel well, it wasn't my first novel. It was my first novel that was published. I wrote a novel when I was in high school to impress a girl. And she wasn't impressed, but it was a damn good story.
That's because she didn't read the book.
Huh?
She didn't read the book.
She probably didn't. She would have
If
liked
she
me
read
better.
it, she'd been impressed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Did you outline ahead of time, or you just sit down and wing it?
In high
Well,
school?
I wrote the beginning and the end, and then I outlined it. I didn't know what was in the middle, so I had to figure it out. And that's how I write books now, too. I wrote a book that prompted somebody to break up with me. I'd never unimpressed somebody with a book I wrote before, other than this girl in high school who didn't read it. But I wrote a book called Not My Closet. And this woman I was seeing at the time thought there was too much sex in it. She broke up with me. I don't know why. I still don't understand why.
Was it ever published?
Well, I published it. I've been doing that lately. Yeah, I published it on Amazon. Not My Closet. It's actually a pretty true story. Most of it's true. The part she didn't like, that was made up. But I couldn't convince her of that. So there you go.
Are you still writing novels?
Yep. Yeah.
What are you working on now?
I'm working on a memoir, actually, about being a comic book writer in the 70s in New York. I'm doing a science fiction trilogy. I'm doing the first book of the trilogy, a time travel story. And the first one is called Saving Lincoln, about kids in the future who go back to save Lincoln. But it's not like it's been done. You know, it's been done over and over and over. This one's different. It's kind of weird. Yeah, and I don't want to tell anybody what's weird about it. I came up with it. I had a pitch meeting on a Monday, and I thought of this story on a Saturday, previous Saturday, and I was all excited. Instead of pitching what I was going to pitch, I pitched this book idea.
Yeah.
And the guy liked it, and I haven't heard from him since. That was about 2 years ago. So what are you going to do? I haven't called.
Are you self-publishing? Are your books mostly self-published?
Yeah. I had an agent for a long time, and Not My Closet, the book that prompted someone to break up with me.
Yeah.
He didn't like it. He said, "This is an action adventure. This is about real people who don't fly under their own power." I said, "Well, you sell this, and you can sell my time travel trilogy." He said, "Sure." And I wrote 5 drafts of the thing. Finally, gave him the 5th draft, and he read it, and he didn't know who to give it to. So I published it myself, and I told him he couldn't have the time travel story. I've been pushing him myself ever since.
How many novels do you write a year?
Oh, just one.
Yeah.
Pretty much one a year.
But you're not dependent on novels for your livelihood.
No.
In fact, you're retired.
I'm old. I'm old. They got money.
But I write novels. You have to write, if you're like me and you're a working novelist, you have to write 3 to 4 novels a year.
How do you do that?
It's not that hard. I mean, one thing is just I got to say, okay, I did 1,000 to 2,000 words a day. and you have that discipline. But then it comes back to the question of what happens next, which is the most vexing part of it. Because when you don't know what happens next, you can't force it. So you
Yeah.
turn to some other project that you're
Yeah.
working on.
Well, that's
Yeah.
why I've got 3 things going at once.
Yeah.
Asimov used to do that. He had this big table in the basement, and he had 3 typewriters on it, and a pile of papers next to each typewriter. When he'd get dry on one project, he'd move to the other chair and get working on another. That's how he wrote 150 books. But so I've got a laptop with 3 projects on it going at once.
Did you ever meet Asimov?
Yeah, once. He was talking to Bob Kane and Julie Schwartz, the both of them, and Julie was about to introduce me to Asimov, but I said hi, and I left because I didn't want to talk to Bob Kane.
I'm sure you've heard the famous story of Steranko slapping Bob Kane upside the head.
That's what I heard. I mean, you ask Steranko if that really happened. He says, yeah, maybe. I'd like it to have happened, but who knows? Steranko, what? He's got to be a good guy in his old age. I like him.
I'm sure that's true. You've met Jim.
Yeah. Oh, I've known him forever. As long as I've known you, almost, I think.
I have a question. I think you were, I don't know. I was reading a little bit about the Miracle Monday thing, and it said, I think that you were trying to come out with a novel every year on Miracle Monday.
Yeah. Yeah, but then the pandemic hit and I started cranky.
Yeah.
No,
I thought that was cool though.
I'd go to Starbucks and write for 4 or 5 hours, and then I'd go out to this bar and edit. Yeah. And now I sit in the house. I'm going to get into that routine again. Not Starbucks. There's a new coffee shop down the street from me. Much better.
Those of us who write for a living have been preparing for this pandemic our whole lives, at least most of us, because I've been sitting in a room by myself writing for a half century, so
yeah,
it's natural to me. I don't go to a bar to write, but I have friends who do. In fact,
I need noise around me.
Yeah.
It can be stimulating. I have a good friend named Peter Brandvold. He publishes 6 novels a year. And he loves to write in bars. Now, how does Pete do it? Well, he doesn't outline. He just sits down and wings it. And he can do this because they're all Westerns. And every Western follows the same parameter. They're all vengeance driven. And he comes up with fresh language and fresh scenarios for each one. I believe he's the most popular Western writer in the world right now. And he doesn't outline either. And he's one of a handful of successful novelists who don't outline. Elmore Leonard was another one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But most novelists outline. And I was shocked to learn that Ken Follett's outlines are 100 pages.
Really?
Yeah. Of course, the books are 800 pages. So.
Well, yeah.
I was going to say.
He's actually pretty good. I like him. I've never met him. Have you?
No. But I have read a couple of his books. My encounters with famous authors have been slim, although once, I don't know how this happened, I got Trevanian's phone number.
Really?
And I called him up and I said, Mr. Trevanian, I want to be a novelist. And he was the sweetest guy. He talked to me for like a half hour.
You know whose phone number I had?
Who?
When I lived in New Hampshire? I had J.D. Salinger's phone number.
Oh, man. He doesn't like to be bothered, does he?
I know he doesn't, but I never called him. I never called him. I was ranting to a guy whose father was friendly with him. And he gave me his phone number. And you remember I ran for Congress in New Hampshire? I used to tell you about it.
We read about it on your Wikipedia.
Yeah. Well, when people asked me why I was running for Congress, the real reason was I wanted Salinger to call me up and tell me, because I would have been his congressman. I wanted him to call me up and tell me he thought I was a cool guy and I should come over and watch the Red Sox game with him. But
in a bizarre twist, having to do with the world of comics, his son, Matt Salinger, starred in the first Captain America movie.
That's right. I forgot about that. That's true.
Yeah.
What are you doing now?
I have no idea.
No?
I think it was one and done.
You know who I knew from I knew the girl that wrote the book about him. What was her name? Joyce. Can't remember her name, but I met her a long time ago up in New Hampshire. And I don't want to go into that. Too much.
Where were you in New Hampshire?
Waterville Valley. You know Waterville Valley?
What led you there?
Huh?
How did you end up in New Hampshire?
I got a job teaching, and it seemed intriguing. It was at a ski academy. It was like a tutorial school. Kids would come from all over the country with their skis, and there would be coaches there. One guy was on the Swiss ski team, and I was teaching English. So they taught me how to ski. I was like 26, 27. So I learned how to ski from maybe the best skiers in the universe. And I haven't been skiing in about 10, 12 years now. But it was fun for a while. I had skis. In the summer, I had a horse. I had a horse all year round, but I would play with him in the summer.
That's where I learned to ski, was New Hampshire.
Where?
I lived around Durham and Concord.
Okay.
I mean, that wasn't where I skied, but that was
Right.
where we were living.
Where'd you go? Like Cannon Mountain?
Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah.
Cannon was nice.
So, Ellie, you were a horseman?
I was. I guess I still am, but I don't have a horse to go with me. So, yeah, I had a horse. It was a thoroughbred named Bo, Rainbow. And my ex-wife she grew up with horses. She taught him to jump, and she tried to get me to do it, and I just wouldn't do it.
No,
just
I
wouldn't do it.
wouldn't either.
I know how. I could explain it to you, but I can't.
Do you know Val Eric?
Yeah, sure. Great guy.
Val's a big horseman. He's got a horse right now. He loves to play polo.
Really?
Yeah. Yep.
Val plays polo.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if you look at his paintings of horses, magnificent. I always think of Frederick Remington he knew horses engraved on his tombstone.
Yeah.
That's what he wanted on his tombstone. And Vale knows horses too. He's had a horse off and on his whole life, but most recently in Texas, he's had this horse for 4 or 5 years. Tries to get out and ride him every day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, days I didn't go skiing. I rode my horse. Then my son was born. I wasn't spending enough time with him. So I gave away my horse.
How old are your kids now?
38 and 30. 37 and 30. He's about
Are they out there in California?
Yeah, they're near me. They're 6 or 7 miles away, the both of them. They're both married now. My son's a doctor. My daughter's a 5th grade teacher. They're both superheroes, basically.
Yeah.
Great.
And I got 2 grandkids, 2 grandsons.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Now, it seemed to me that your run for Congress was based on, came directly out of your idealism and love for superheroes. Would
That's
that
pretty
be
much
fair?
true.
Yeah.
You know, I had this idea that we were a community. Comics people, fantasy people, writers, artists. And I thought I could turn that into something by running for Congress. It never really caught on. I mean, I almost did it again here in California years ago. But people I knew just weren't interested enough in it. I mean, I know, you know, to run for office, you need a campaign, a candidate, and a pile of money. And after a while, I figured out how to get the pile of money. You know,
That's the most important part.
Well, no, it's the hardest part.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and I had a pretty good campaign, and I was a pretty good candidate, but I couldn't figure out how to raise money in New Hampshire. When I came to California, I thought I knew, and I kind of did, but I wanted to get comics people involved in it. I wanted to turn what makes fantasy into what makes idealism. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So on.
Did you approach certain comic people?
I approached everybody. I sent letters out to everybody. Even you, I think, but you weren't.
No, I don't recall that at all.
No?
I was probably in Wisconsin at that time.
No, okay. Yeah. But I didn't get much response.
You did get who was it? Somebody endorsed you.
A lot of people endorsed me.
I mean, that was I thought there was somebody that was, man, I'd have to look it up again. There was a comic person that I thought
Tony Isabella?
yeah, that's who
He did.
That's yep.
He did, but that, I never told anybody this, but I ran for state legislature in New York. Damn near made it. Just before I moved out here. And Steve Ross sent me a bunch of money. The guy who had been chairman of Warner Brothers at the time. And I didn't tell anybody that because I didn't want anybody to know. But
Yeah.
it would have caused a lot of trouble at work.
Right.
But I ended up leaving around that time anyway. So
Do you read comics today?
not a lot. Not a lot. I read old ones. Got a really good comic shop around the corner. I go over there and pick through the old box.
What's your opinion of what you see for the new comics from Marvel and DC?
I think the process is off. I think there's too much editorial involvement. Editors don't write. Artists don't write. And I think there's too much dictation going into the process of a plot, I mean, I used to come to the office with a plot in mind. And Julie and I would kick it around if it was Julie. And he would always contribute a pet idea. And he would look for that in the story I eventually showed up with. If his idea wasn't in the story, I had done it wrong and I should go rewrite it. But other than that, it was on me. I don't think I could live in the world where somebody else is dictating your story to you. It just isn't fun. So there.
I very rarely had an editor dictate a story to me. It only happened, I think, once was when I was writing The Punisher, and my editor, Carl Potts, was kicked upstairs, and I got a new editor, and that editor was a gimmick guy. And he had all sorts of great ideas. It was his idea to turn Punisher black.
Really?
Yeah. But I was happy to do that. I had read Black Like Me, so I knew it was possible. And Don also loved gimmick covers. He had the plain brown wrapper cover.
Okay.
Oh,
And he had photographic covers like the one of the wedding cake with
Those I like.
the groom on top and the blood trickling down the cake.
Yeah.
And then he commissioned a whole bunch of covers from Mike Golden and said, here, write stories around these covers. And I was happy to do that.
That's like early 90s then, huh?
No, I wrote Punisher from about 87.
late 80s. Yeah.
Yeah. Probably in 91, 92.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mike Golden replaced me at DC when I left.
As what?
Editor. He was an editor for a while.
Mike Golden was an editor?
Yeah. For like 10 minutes.
I didn't know
Not
that.
as long as I was. What?
He didn't know that.
No, I had no idea he was an editor. And I've run into Mike many times over the years. And, he talked about his time as a dispatcher in Southeast Asia.
Oh, yeah?
When he was the guy guiding freighters in and out of harbors.
Wow.
Cool.
And incidentally, he's doing his first continuity in decades right now for a Graham Nolan project.
Neat.
Wow.
I'm going to have to go check out some stuff. I'm going to have to look at the front of the store this time. Now that they've opened it back up,
Well, most of us that were in the regular comics at that time are now working outside the system via crowdfunding.
Does that work? I keep thinking of doing that. It works, huh?
If you put the work in.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. It seems like, I mean, what I want to do is sit and write. I just want to make up stuff.
Me too.
Right.
Just make shit up. What do you do for
I
a living?
know.
Make shit up. That's what agents are for. That's what. But
I've never had an agent.
Never?
No, and I'm busier than ever. People are calling me from all around the world to write comics for them, and I'm happy to do it. But I have generated some crowdfunding projects. The first was Florida Man, and we raised about $36,000 for that, which was enough to cover expenses and give us a little chunk. But the next one was Thin Blue Line, and that just seemed to hit the zeitgeist like that.
Really?
And we're sending the book to the printer this month, so we'll be delivering ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah,
Graphic.
I'm definitely gonna have to check these things out.
I was going to say definitely graphic novels do better than shorter comics.
That's
on,
right.
on the crowdfunding.
They're not going to pay $25 for a pamphlet, but they will pay $25 for a 64-page story.
Yeah.
And some of these guys, and Graham Nolan is one of them, their projects routinely go into six figures.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. You might have me convinced.
I was gonna say, sold. He's like, I can fund my project now.
Yeah.
When are you finishing your memoir?
Oh, I don't know. It's on my list of 3 things I'm doing at once. So who knows?
You should do that as a graphic novel.
I'm thinking of doing something else as a graphic novel.
Yeah.
I have a teleplay I wrote, a pilot for
Oh, cool.
a TV show, and I haven't shown it to hardly anybody.
Do you have a synopsis of what it's about?
No, I got the script.
Yeah. See, people are going to say, "What's your story about?"
I could tell you what it's about. It's about, 60 pages. Never mind.
Do you have artists?
No. Well, I know all the artists. I mean, yeah, I guess I got artists.
Yeah, it's that hard. If you can, one of the things that I do is if an artist throws in with me on a project that I generate, and we're going to do a crowdfunder, I offer him co-ownership of the property because there's no upfront money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But my track record is getting better and better. So I have a lot of artists that are happy to work with me.
On graphic novels.
Yeah.
That's work.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll
But if
send you
you-
a link. I'll send you a link
Yeah.
when we're done to my latest. You can take a look.
Okay, I will.
Yeah.
I may do more than look. Who knows? What do I know? That's a good logo. Baron Earls.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, it is.
That's me. I do a lot of those.
Jeff is
I do some of that stuff
multi-talented.
on the side.
He has formatted my novels. He's designed
Really?
covers. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
E. Nelson Bridwell spent. Remember him?
I remember
Yeah.
the name.
He spent like most of an afternoon trying to figure out how to sign his name so it would be the same going frontwards and backwards.
Wow. Nice.
So he did. It was just initials, but ENB. So it worked.
Should look at Walt Simonson's signature.
Oh, I know. It's a brontosaurus.
Yeah.
He's been doing that since he was a kid.
I like and I mean for our viewers who don't know, do you want to tell the story about how when you started doing the exclamation point with your middle initial?
Oh yeah.
Oh, sure, I guess. Well, I did it by accident. I got used to going to that end of the typewriter to put periods because you didn't put periods in scripts at that time.
Yeah.
They'd get lost in the pulp, and so I signed my name, ELLiOT S. MAGGiN, but instead of hitting the period, I hit the exclamation mark, and Julie Schwartz saw it, and he flipped out over it and ran down the hall to the production room and said, "From now on, ELLiOT's middle initial will be punctuated with an exclamation mark. He has a typo in his name. Leave it there." So
That's awesome.
That's a great story.
So now, it's on checking accounts and deeds and things.
Right. Yeah.
Because people keep telling me that's my name.
Oh yeah.
I believe them.
How many novels have you published?
7, I think. Yeah.
And when do you anticipate finishing the one you're working on now?
About 8 months ago. Yeah, I mean, just really sitting in the house has been debilitating.
Yeah.
But I'm working on it. I'm working on it pretty soon.
I have to say that last summer, all the outdoor venues were open. And so we went out night after night to hear bands. We must have heard 20 bands. And on Valentine's Day, they had a band outside down in Loveland. It was brisk. It was in the 40s. But the band just killed it. And they had these heating towers all over the place. Fort Collins has got more music than any city I've ever been in. Yeah, it's unbelievable. And I moved here from Madison, Wisconsin, which considered itself a music town. But there are more bands and talent in Fort Collins than there are in Madison.
Like local bands?
Yeah, local bands.
Really?
And many of them are superb. Some aren't so good. You take what you can get.
Yeah.
But the breweries have outdoor patios. And they're the ones that sponsor this music. And it's a great deal because the patios are beautiful and you're outside on a summer day and you're listening to music. And what could be finer?
Yeah, I'm going to have to do that more now that the world's opening up. Slowly.
Yeah. Well, I've been doing that my whole life. I mean, because I love to do it and because often I've been writing for publications. But it's got me out. I saw in Boston, it was my night to go out. It was my job to go out night after night, listen to the bands, talk to the musicians, and write about them. And I thought I was in heaven.
Yeah.
Did you ever regret anything you wrote, Mike?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've regretted stuff, but mostly on social media, not for a long time.
Right. Yeah, no, I was just wondering because I actually wrote. I wrote for. I'm in Tampa, the Tampa Bay area, and I was writing on some different bands and stuff and music but for like local, but also for national. And there were some people that I kind of ripped on their solo album that was like like the artist for like a rock band or something, and then they went and they recorded their own album. And it was just so different and stuff that like I really didn't care for it, and I didn't think it was that great because the lyrics weren't that creative and stuff. But then I kept after like I kind of said, "Don't quit your day job."
Yeah,
I kept going back to it, and I'm like, man, but these songs they're just like so catchy and stuff. Like I love it, and I'm just like, oh man, now I feel like such a jerk for saying that.
Who was it?
It was for Mike knows. It was for a Christian rock band. It was for the lead singer of the band Petra, and he was. I'm trying to think. John Schlitt. I can't remember who he sang for a regular rock band before he joined them. But then he released his solo album, and I was just like, oh.
My prayer for Christian rock is that they should discover minor chords.
Oh, I can send you plenty of Christian rock with minor chords.
Well, I'd love to hear it because most of the Christian rock I hear is all major chords and sung in a voice of awe, which doesn't mean these guys can't tear down the roof when they want to. It's just when they're doing that Christian thing that it's kind of antithetical to the spirit of rock and roll, which is up yours, tear
tear down the system.
Yeah,
that always perplexed me.
What kind of music styles are at the places near you? I mean, I assume that there's some folk and like jazz.
There's a little folk. There's probably a lot of folk and a lot of jazz, but what I like is rock and roll.
Right.
And there's a lot of great rock bands out here, and there's a lot of bluegrass. Lot of bluegrass. I love bluegrass. Because a good bluegrass band is like a jazz band. I mean, they improvise in the same way. And that's why so many bluegrass players can play on jazz albums. But my favorite is soul music. I mean, Tower of Power is one of the greatest bands I've ever seen. I love them. And the band we saw on Valentine's Day was called Soul School. And it was a 9-man soul band with a 3-man horn section.
Wow.
And 2 lead singers, a man and a woman, who had unbelievable voices. I mean, just unbelievable voices from the basement to the attic.
Wow.
And that's what I like. ELLiOT, are you familiar with Tower of Power?
No, not really. No, not. You know what I've been getting into lately? I've been liking kids' music. Yeah. I get Alexa to wake me up with Olivia Rodrigo in the morning. I mean, she's just so fun.
There's a few. Yeah, there's actually a few people who really like her stuff.
Yeah.
There's the Monkees, the Archies. And that's kids' music, and I like it too.
Oh yeah, but that's when we were kids.
Yeah.
I used to play monkey songs on the guitar. I don't even know where my guitar is.
Yeah.
I
Wait a
thought it was
minute.
in this
You
room.
play guitar too?
I used to.
He knows minor chords.
Do you know minor chords?
I know a few of them. Yeah, there's one that. Yeah, never mind. Yeah. So what else is new?
Well, I am working on a novel for a guy who's got a youth group of wayward youth that he wants to whip into shape. It's kind of an inspirational novel to show them how to be a man, which I can use because I need to make that up as I go along. Maybe I'll learn to be a man one of these
I was
days.
going to say, who are you going to talk to about that?
What's his name? Mike Chabon wrote a book about how to be a man.
Well, there are a lot of good books about it.
Yeah.
And Robert R. McCammon wrote a novel called Boy's Life, which everyone should read.
Yeah.
It's one of the greatest books I've ever read. And it's a little bit horror, but it's because that's Robert R. McCammon, but it's also a coming of age story. And I suppose The Red Badge of Courage is a coming of age story.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going around.
Lord of the Flies, is it coming?
Well, there's coming to truncated age.
But I mostly choose stories that fascinate me, the kind of story I would want to read. And I think most novelists do the same. I did write one comic book novel. It was Witchblade for Silvestri Productions. And that was the first published novel I ever did. And it was so long ago. And then it was like at least a decade before I tried writing a novel again. And when I finally stepped back into it, which was about 15 years ago, I realized that I had finally learned how to write a novel because I'd been writing novels all my life and they were crap. So I have a theory that every would-be writer has a million words of bullshit clogging up his system. And you have to get that out. You have to flush that out before you get to the good stuff. And the sad thing is that some people will never flush it all out.
Most people never flush it all out. I mean, you do very bright writing, though. You know, you like to make scenes pop. I like that.
Oh, thank you. I try to do that. My greatest influence is John D. MacDonald, his Travis McGee novels.
Yeah.
But I also cite Carl Barks, because if you want to understand comic book structure and how to write a story where everything clicks, and then you got to study the master, Carl Barks. I thought he was just a genius.
Yeah.
And Philip Jose Farmer opened up my mind to science fiction possibilities. But a lot of writers have influenced me. A lot of writers have helped me along the way. I've had a lot of help. And finally, you know, I'm a slow learner, but finally I got it. And I was writing this one novel and I looked up and I thought, holy shit, this isn't complete crap. I know what I'm doing. And, you know, it's that moment, that epiphany where you understand story, what constitutes story. And many, many things constitute story.
You know something, you can teach it. I figured it out enough so I could explain it to people. And I do it all the time. Every time I was substitute teaching for a little bit. And whenever I didn't have anything to teach a class, I'd explain how to write a story.
That's great.
I got a 2-hour storytelling thing I do.
That's great.
Yeah. And it's more than just structure. It's life. The whole universe is built on a 3-part structure. Everything fractals. Same as a story. Every sentence is a story. Every joke is a story if it works, you know.
Right.
Well, once you understand story, then there's so many things that constitute story. I always say it can be based on a fascinating personality. You got Sherlock Holmes, people are going to read. Or it can be a fascinating situation, Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
Or a seductive narrative voice, like Mark Twain or James Ellroy.
There you go.
And if you got all those things, you're probably a good storyteller.
Well, everybody should know it, though. You ever see Quora online?
Do I ever do what? Quora?
Quora.
What is it?
Like a question answer thing. People same questions and you answer them if you like them. But somebody sent me a Quora question once. It said, how do I tell my daughter, my 15-year-old daughter, that she's a terrible writer? I said, I had a 15-year-old daughter who was a terrible writer, and now she can teach it.
Yeah.
You know, it's no big deal. I hesitate to call it a formula. It's not a formula. It's
Structure.
not more than a structure. It's less than a formula. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost intuitive. I mean, there are a lot of intuitive writers.
Yeah. Most people are intuitive writers until they figure out what they're doing.
But
Most
I
people
mean, there are these writers like The Heart is a Lonely Hunter.
Okay.
And she wrote that when she was 24 years old. Oh, come on.
I wrote that first novel when I was 24.
Carson McCullers.
Carson McCullers, right.
Your first novel, was it published?
What?
Your first novel?
Yeah, The Last Son of Krypton.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was doing, but I did it. And now I could look at it and say, oh, I see what I did. I didn't know at the time. I had no idea.
Did you have doubts about it?
I don't remember.
I think most writers have doubts. They suffer a period when they think, oh, is it any good? Should I show it to anyone? They're going to laugh at me. It's no good, but maybe it is.
Yeah, I don't have those anymore. I guess I used to.
Me either.
No? Good.
No.
Good. I mean, but it doesn't matter if I publish them or not, though, anymore. It's kind of nuts. I told my son I'm going to leave him all my unpublished work. You know, it's all in this machine I got in front of me here.
Yeah.
So I just have to back it up all the time.
As long as there's no giant electromagnetic pulse.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's that.
That's his next novel.
Oh, yeah. You know, I got this bling I wear. I don't have it on now, but it's a 30 gig zip drive hanging around my neck most of the time.
Really?
Just in case?
Yeah.
Is it gold plated?
No, it's just.
It should be lead plated.
Yeah. I should put it like a Faraday cage around it.
Yeah.
For when Putin sends over the pop, the blip.
The blip.
Oh, I'd love to see a blimp invasion.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just seeing. I mean, they look cool, but they're just slow.
They move slow.
Right. And guys in parachutes falling out of them. Yeah, that would be cool.
Oh.
How do you invade an enormous country? I mean, we put 200,000 people within throwing distance of the Mexican border every year, every July.
Right.
I go down there to San Diego, and we have 200,000 geeks sitting around on the edge of invading Mexico, or at least they could be.
Right.
You know, and for weeks I've been hearing there are 200,000 Russians on the Ukraine border. He couldn't possibly pull them back if he wanted to. Well, it's easy to pull them back.
Yeah, he could.
Yeah.
You know, but
Yeah.
I can't see how you could occupy. My grandfather was born in Kiev. It's a town of 3 million people now. It was a little town at the time. It was
Right.
150 years ago. But 50 years ago? Yeah. But now it's got 3 million people in it. How do you occupy a country whose capital has 3 million people in it, just the capital,
Right.
with 200,000 Russians? I don't care what they're carrying around.
You instill a reign of terror.
Yeah.
You shoot people who are walking around without papers, and because most people don't want to fight, they just
Well,
want
that's
to.
what they do in Moscow.
Yeah.
That's what they do. I was going to go there 2 years ago. I had a whole trip planned. I was going to go to Iceland and Denmark, and then St. Petersburg, take the train down to Moscow, take the train across to Beijing, and go down to Singapore, and then come home. And because I met a girl who did that when I was on the Great Wall 40 years ago. And she had come from Denmark by herself. She got there that day. And I told her that was the best adventure I've ever heard of. This is what I want to do.
Yeah.
This is my next adventure. And I went home, and my wife met me at the airport. And she said, "How are you?" And I said, "Great." I said, "How are you?" She said, "Pregnant." So I've been raising kids ever since. So I was ready to go 2 years ago. My daughter told me they're grown up now. I'm allowed to go out and play. Then this thing hit. This thing hit, and I haven't been able to do it. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I do want to go around the world by train. That's a very important thing.
I love to do that too. And
Yeah.
we have these spur railroads in Colorado that hug the mountains. And I've been
Cog
meaning to get,
railroads?
pardon?
Cog railroads?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
And I've been meaning to get down there and do one because we have something called the Black Canyon and the Gunnison in the southern part of the state, which is stunning. We rode our motorcycles through there some years ago, and I'd like to take my time to see it more slowly. I'm sure there are boat trips you can take.
I have a friend who did the Grand Canyon on train. Like, there's a train in the canyon that you can ride.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then there's
not
even
the whole canyon, because I've been down the Grand Canyon.
yeah, not
in
the
a
whole
raft.
canyon. No, but they even have like kind of like hotels like along the way that you can.
How do you get down there? By mule?
That's a good question. I do not know. You're not by mule though, because there's parts where it's not cracked forever.
I'm sure that the train has a station which is approachable by road. They can grade a road down there in certain spots. Most of Grand Canyon is very forbidding, and you can't go in there and blast a new road. It's not legal.
Right. Well, and there's parts of it is native land too, so they can't do whatever they want. But yeah,
my dad was a roofer, and when he retired, maybe a month after he retired, we took a car trip across the country. I'd never been to the Grand Canyon before, so we went there.
Right.
And he walks up to the edge and he looks over the edge, and I said, "Dad, back away, cut it out."
Yeah.
And he says, "Who are you talking to?" He just made his living on roofs in Manhattan all his life.
Oh yeah.
Now they have this walkout that extends cantilevered out over the canyon. It has a clear, transparent floor.
That makes me nervous.
Oh
just
yeah,
looking at
I'm not going on that. I'm not going on that. No. That's like watching my dad go to the edge of the canyon. That's no good.
Yep.
So, ELLiOT, if you have that itch to do more comics, I will be happy to share what little I know about it, crowdfunding and stuff.
Yeah. I don't have an itch. I got a ambition, I guess.
You got a story.
I got lots of stories. I got my stories got cut off one day about 30 years ago. Yeah. So.
What do you mean?
Oh, I had more Superman stories to write, and I really wasn't interested in doing comics much.
Oh, I see.
If I wasn't doing Superman. That was my first, comic book that I read.
Yeah.
And it just got truncated. People ask me if I have more Superman stories to write. I said, "Yeah, you got some time? I'll make you a list."
Yeah.
You could always, and a lot of writers do this when they can't use the licensed character, they create a facsimile who's near enough, and nobody's going to bitch because so many comic book characters are so similar to others.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, you would definitely be the one to do it for the.
I may be in the middle of one.
We'll see.
Yeah, didn't want to elaborate on that, but yeah, I'm doing something like that.
That'd be cool.
We'll see.
All right.
Yeah.
We done?
Yeah.
We can let you go, especially now that isn't they're kind of declaring it an endemic now in California, so you'll be able to go outside a little bit more and
I'll be able to go outside and have
eat.
Have a martini through my mask.
Yeah.
I might have to.
I'd love a martini.
I like martinis.
Yeah, me too.
I made a martini on my 50th birthday, and I it's been my drink ever since.
Wow.
3 olives with no let's gin and no vermouth and a lot of olive juice. That's a martini.
Yeah.
If you go to a bar and you ask for a martini and the bartender says, "What kind of vodka do you want? You find another bartender. Very important.
So what's your since you guys are both martini experts, what's your opinion of James Bond's martini habit?
He's got ice cubes in the damn thing. You know, he wants it shaken.
Yeah.
And they're going to be slivers of ice in there.
No, I don't want
That's
any ice
water.
in my martini.
Yeah.
They ice the glass. That's enough for me. The vodka's cold. I'm a vodka man.
Are you?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I am too.
All right, I'm going to go then.
Okay.
Thanks, ELLiOT.
See you guys.
Thank you. Yeah.
See you soon.
See you.
All right.